EVO. This series contains adult language and depictions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. Recording. All right, 3, 2, 1. Hello, welcome back to The Devil Within, Satan's Shadow, bonus episode number 3. I'm joined again by the great Margot Carmichael, who is very wonderfully agreed to put up with me again today. So Margot, thank you very much. Thank you very
Happy
much.
to.
Thank you. I'm really grateful. Honestly, I joke around, but I'm really grateful for your time here and for your very thoughtful consideration of the episodes. It really means a lot to me. So thank you very much.
No problem. You're welcome. I really appreciate that you changed the color behind our name tags on here. Thank you for that.
I listen.
Really messing with the aesthetics of the social media posts. So
I understand. I was trying to have some brand consistency with the logo of my company, but I defer to your aesthetics. Yeah.
much better.
How are things with Death by Southwest? Talk a little bit.
Things are good. It's been 2 years and I feel like now I'm hitting a rhythm with the storytelling. I've never had a problem like sharing my personal life on the podcast and talking behind the microphone or connecting with listeners, but the story was always kind of the last thing for me that was important, and that's not the way to do it with a true crime podcast. So, I don't know, I've been really enjoying telling the stories that I've been telling lately, and I'm like that. So, it's good.
Terrific. Well, you're a master at creating those social relationships, and we could all learn from that. So well done. Well done.
Thank you.
So Satan's Shadow, episode 3, Gluttony.
Whoa. This episode was jam-packed. We had NYPD Blue, El Paso in the 1600s, the 70s and 80s drug culture, Cuba, the Bay of Pigs, Pearl Harbor. Like it was like I mean, and then of course Richard Ramirez as well. But you covered a lot of ground in this.
Well, there were a lot of off ramps, and what I love so much about what I do is that I'm able to just indulge my curiosities, and when I set out to, I outlined this whole season like 6 months ago. And then we picked a release date, and so I kind of put it away for a while. And so then when I go back, for me, outlining is the most important thing, right? That's where like so much of the work is done. And I have a shorthand with myself as and when I reopened the outline for this episode, I was like, wait, what? El Paso in the 16, what am I talking about? And what's with this? And I wrote racist segregated regiment in World War II. And I went, what is, and that, so I got to kind of go, okay, I get it. Like how it all relates back to either Ramirez, his victims, or kind of painting the cultural picture of what was going on at the time, you know? So, yes, there were a lot of off ramps in this episode, but hopefully people will kind of grasp and kind of understand what I was aiming for. I don't always hit it, but what I was aiming for was, like we mentioned last week, when it comes to a victim, mention something that anchors that person emotionally with the audience, so they'll feel some kind of remorse or pain or sadness that they were a victim. And with this guy, with William Doy, what he went through, man, you talk about not deserving your fate.
That's the one with the disabled wife.
Yes, the disabled wife, but him specifically, being a Nisei, a first generation Japanese American,
right?
The indignity of being forced into a relocation camp. First chance he gets when Roosevelt's like, okay, we're gonna have the segregated regimen of only Japanese volunteer. Volunteer means we don't, maybe you do, maybe you don't, we don't really care.
Right.
And they had all of these volunteer soldiers come out there, and then they went, and all that they did was kick ass. That's all that they did, you know? And they had like a little extra to prove,
Right.
which is ridiculous to ask of natural born US citizens
Completely. It's
completely.
absolutely
But yet
ridiculous.
still they felt like that they had more to prove, um, because in the eyes of a lot of people, they were just barely Americans to begin with.
You had a
Um,
line in that. You had a line in that that was, I swear I wrote it down somewhere, and it was like, mm,
because they
the
look like the
enemy
enemy,
loo yes, the
because he looks like the enemy, that doesn't mean
yes.
they are the enemy, something like
Yeah,
that,
and I was
yeah.
like, that's so true, so good, and could be applied I mean, like, that works in so many
Generationally,
different yeah,
always,
yeah.
always. It happened after 9/11, right?
Ugh, yes. Right.
Brown Muslim people,
It's
you're the
gross.
enemy. That's it.
I
Yeah, it is. It's
so upsetting.
yeah, but it's yeah, I know,
And
it's our
then the
history.
fate
But
that he
anyway,
met
so
after
yeah,
all of
go ahead.
after, like, a difficult life, and then he's 66, right? And, like and then that's what happened to him?
Random, random
Ugh.
act of evil. Yeah, I know, I
Yeah,
know.
there was
But anyway,
the murders in this were
oof,
very gruesome, but before
they
we
get
get
worse.
there,
Yeah.
again, I wanna compliment you on the music. You actually sent me
Thank
down
you.
a tangent. The music was so good. It has been in every episode, but it was so impressive in this one and, like, very talking about El Paso, there was very different music from when you were talking about the '80s and, like, it really went well and, like, set the tone, and I in my head was like, "What? Like, how is Branden doing this?" And so I started looking up, like, is there an AI program that I could upload my podcast audio into, and it would analyze it and then pick music, royalty-free music that would match the different, like, parts of
Hmm.
my podcast? And it turns out there are several, but I haven't had time to, like, investigate if they're actually there are, but do they actually do what an actual human can do? Probably not. But, yeah, the music was great.
Well, thanks. I didn't know that there was AI stuff for that. That's interesting.
Yeah,
But no, I've got uh, over the years I've amassed,
a
you know,
library.
through paid services like a library that honestly probably no one else would be able to use because I rename all of the tracks in my
Yeah.
like fucking guerrilla method, right? Right?
Oh my god, I'd
Funny,
love to see that.
sad but fast, like shit like that. Like that's so when I'm editing, I'm
That's
like, "Ooh,
very
this is
good.
sad, but it should be faster." I know I have a sad but fast track somewhere in here, right?
That's
But a
so
lot of the
funny.
music in this also is new. I'm kind of finding it as I go, and it's all, it's again, just it's theater of the mind, right? So it's to try and put the listener in a spot,
You did, you do.
that kind of complements the and sometimes it's a cheat. Sometimes it's a cheat for my writing not being up to snuff, and so the music kind of complements it and helps it. No, but it is, that's true.
I
And
mean, that
sometimes
makes sense.
yeah, and conversely, sometimes if I think I have a really cool turn of phrase or a really nice run, I'll let the music drop out so I can peacock a little bit, you know what I mean?
Right, right.
But but
Yeah, that makes sense.
that's why there's a lot of music in the episodes, so
There is a
just
lot
wanna
of music
yeah,
and clips,
yeah,
and the I was wondering in the beginning, the clips, like, it's in one of like, this person's talking and it's in this ear, and then this person
mhm.
talks and it's in this ear. Was that purposeful? I literally wrote down, "Who the fuck are you?" Like, I put down, like, clips in different ears. Who the fuck are you that you can do this? Like,
When you figure out the editing software we use, it takes 3 seconds
oh, okay,
to
it was really
to go
cool. I thought that
to go
was
from
it was kinda like,
ear to ear.
"Whoa." I was like,
Yeah,
"Whoa."
yeah.
But it catches your attention if you're not already paying attention to be like, "Oh, okay."
Cool, cool.
And then that El Paso song by Marty Robbins. It's one of Mark's
Yeah.
favorite songs. It's
Is
great.
it really?
Yeah, he loves it. He loves it. Loves he loves, like, old person music. Um, but yeah, so that's
Okay.
me. And the history of El Paso. This is the first time in these episodes that I've known some of the things
Oh,
that
cool.
you were talking about because I've covered Stories in Death by Southwest from El Paso and given, like, a history of El Paso, and then also I taught 4th grade. And so
Mhm.
the explorers, we taught that. So I
Yeah.
knew some of it, which felt nice. I didn't feel like so stupid, like I was in history class. So it was good. It was very interesting. But you did say something. You said the thriving city of Juarez. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, thriving in murder or, Juarez is so unsafe. So unsafe.
Granted, it's no longer a tiny village, okay? It's a
Okay.
city,
True.
okay? It has sadly kind of evolved with that region of Mexico, as a
Devolved
right, as a result of kind of rampant, the cartels and the drug
cartels.
trade and all that, right? So it's yes, but it may have been gilding the lily a little bit there, but,
A little bit. I mean, I literally when I used to drive from Atlanta to Tucson when I lived in Atlanta and I'd drive when my mom was alive, I'd drive to Tucson for a couple months.
Mhm,
And you go, if you go the southernmost route, you go right through El Paso and like you're driving on the 10 and Juarez, I could
mhm,
literally spit out my car window into Juarez. It's right there. And
yeah,
I was so terrified driving through there and I had my bulldog with me that like when I had to stop for gas, I like had a knife in my pocket and I'm like
mhm,
looking around. I mean, like I was overly paranoid, but because El Paso is a very beautiful city in some ways, but the fact that it is so close to Juarez
yeah.
would be terrifying. I could never live there.
It's really interesting because, El Paso was voted the best city to live in America, like, 5
That's
separate times.
another note that like when?
In
When
the
was
last
that?
like, 5 times in the last 20 years. I think
Really?
2022 oh, yeah, yeah, 2019, a couple years in a row, yeah,
That's shocking to me. Although when I have badmouthed El Paso on my podcast, I've definitely had people be like, "Hey, I live in El Paso and it's really
yeah.
nice." And I was like, "Okay, sorry. I've only driven through and it scared the shit out of me because of Juarez mostly." But
Yeah,
I mean, I guess 300 days of sunshine they have.
yeah,
You know how
yeah,
many we have here in Tucson?
how many?
350.
Wow, that's
Annoying.
that's a lot.
Sucks. Yeah, I don't like it.
You should get into
Um,
the solar industry.
no kidding. I mean, it's sunny every day. We haven't had rain in I don't know, months.
It's raining here today.
So,
It's
well,
very
that was
funny.
something I wrote down when you got into the 3rd circle of hell with all the rain. First of all, um, whoa, the writing here
Thank you.
was like, I
How
mean,
awful is that? How awful does that sound to you? I mean, just the way that Dante described the ground, not solid,
yeah,
but not
that was
li and just
cool.
just grossly spongy that starts to suck you in, but never fully does. The rain, you're just
It
covered
made
in
me
muck.
want rain.
Oh,
I literally wrote down so far, if I had to pick any circle of hell to be in that we've covered thus far, it's going to be this one because I miss rain. Like, really go for some rain.
just that
And
constant, dirty,
no,
fat rain, he called it.
yes, that's what you said.
Oh,
It's
I stole that from Dante. Yeah, but
oh really? Because I was
yeah,
like, whoa,
yeah,
the kind that promises neither dawn nor dusk. It is perpetual, as is all else in this dismal ring of the inferno. The rain, filthy, fat, putrid, descends in slow, relentless sheets, each droplet pregnant with the weight of sin. That's
that's Dante.
so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so good. I mean, wow. And did you write this? Because I also loved this part. Sin was not the sin was not in their consumption, but their failure to see beyond it. They
Yes.
mistook pleasure for fulfillment, mistook fullness for contentment, mistook the momentary satisfaction of the body for the nourishment of the soul.
Well,
They're damned to a hunger that can never be fed. I love that. That is well
wow.
written.
Yeah, well,
That
thank you.
is
That's
well written. And also, I thought, oh my God, isn't this like America? Kind
or
of like
or consumerism or consumers.
consumerism, yeah, I
Yeah,
guess.
right.
Like, one and the same sometimes,
Capitalism. Yeah,
right? That, like, people think you buy more, you have more things, you're gonna be happier, you feel fulfilled, but those things aren't fulfilling you. That's all I could think. That's what I was thinking about. But I thought that was quite
Yeah, you talk
prolific.
about that late. You talk about that. Because remember, we're dealing with a 14th century attitude towards sin and virtue in Dante. Okay, um, that has been so denuded over the centuries, right? That
Right.
it's unrecognizable because, and I kind of mentioned that towards the end, right? Like who among us hasn't d
Right.
overindulged, right? Or overspent
Who
or
hasn't
whatever.
had the urge to take
There
beyond
you
necessity?
right, okay, so does that
Of
mean that we're
course.
sinners and that we belong in hell? No, and you know what, Margo? It wasn't really like that back then either, okay? There were a lot
Sure.
of posturing religious people who would try to take the high road and then go to a brothel afterwards, right?
Right.
And then quick run into confession and get absolution and see you later, everything's cool, right? Like that's the golden parachute of Catholicism, you know? Um, but for someone like Dante, right, who was creating this seminal work and also trying to portray himself as a very pious religious person, you know, to be taken seriously by the ruling class because they faked it better than anybody. Okay.
Right.
Like our politicians here. Like you can't get elected in America unless you say, I love God and may God bless us all and all that. Okay. It was the same I know. It was the same thing back then. So but
Well,
Dante
and it's
takes
the
his
same thing now that you
same
just
thing now.
said, like, go to a brothel and then go and pray. I feel like all people in power are doing shady, shitty things and then, "Oh, please
No,
forgive
of
me,"
course.
and blah, blah,
I
blah.
mean, regardless of anyone's political persuasions, it's tough to deny the hypocrisy of okay, take Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Together they have like 13 kids from 7 women, but they're who the religious right thinks will deliver us from, you know, the moral decay.
Ugh.
Okay, I guess.
Ugh.
I find that immensely
Deplorable.
hypocritical. Right, of course.
I
So,
I have to share something. I saw a bumper sticker today about on somebody's car, and it says, it's a Tesla, and it says, "I bought this before we knew Elon was crazy." I thought that was really funny. Like she must have, I mean,
that's
that has to be a recent bumper sticker, but I thought it was pretty funny.
that's a good
Um,
bumper sticker. Wow, that
sorry.
person's making money. Wow. But so anyway, yeah, it's a very interesting ring of hell. See, it's my least favorite
Oh,
so far.
really?
Yeah. Because I mean, really think about it. You're never dry. You're never clean.
Yeah.
Everything's sodden and wet and filthy and dirty and cold and clammy and oh, I
But you're gorging on meats dripping in fat and sauces thick with cream and wines aged to the perfect bouquet.
okay, yeah. That's Dante. Yeah.
I like it. I so far this is where I'm
But
going if
then
I have a choice.
but you're never like, "Whew, that was great. That's enough."
Yeah,
No.
that's great. You never get full. You could
Oh,
just eat forever. My dream. I would love it. Do you know that
that's
I've been like limiting my food for like 20 years? If I could
mm,
just eat without ever thinking about it and never have to like whatever, I'm already in hell. I may as well enjoy this food.
wow.
I'll take it.
Okay, well, we're different there. Okay,
Yeah, for
okay.
sure. Well, yeah, I mean like I'm assuming I know you like run and stuff and you're
Mhm.
health conscious, but I'm assuming you haven't been dieting or not even dieting, like concerned about your physical physique to the point where you are, mentally counting calories and grams of protein in every single meal.
No, but that happens I've been doing that for a long time. Like, that happens pretty
Me
naturally for
too.
me. Like,
I'm so
I know my
sick
body
of it.
really well. No, I know my body really well, and I know like, stuff like, "Alright, I'll skip lunch if I wanna have a huge dinner with the family." You know,
Sure.
to try and keep my caloric intake within a range plus or minus 2 or 300 per day, right? Then I know that, you know, I won't go too far afield and I'll have the energy that I need and I won't start like putting on weight and I know what I burn when I'm running or when I'm in the gym or when I'm in the sauna. So yeah, if
Yeah, you're also a man, so it's like, you could be like, "Oh, I'm gonna limit my calories for today," and then you lose 15 pounds, and like, "And I'm gonna go for a run," and then you've lost a ton of weight. Whereas like a woman of the same age will have to run 6 miles every day for a year, and like, "Oh my god, I lost 5 pounds." It's different.
I
So,
guess it's different. I guess it's
it's
different.
different, but I choose gluttony. We'll
I
see.
would much rather be I would much rather be in the tempest-tossed, stormy world of the lovers gone wrong. I'd like to live there.
But, like, the
Lust.
lovers gone wrong, I feel like it'd be lust, but it would also be, like, pain and heartache in there too.
Yeah.
Ugh, no,
Yeah.
thank you. No.
Okay.
Actually, I would prefer to have lived in the '80s, like how
Mm.
you said, it was the '80s, man, cocaine was everywhere, I'll take it. That's where I would like to live. I was definitely wish that I had, like, been born in the '60s, so in the '80s, I could have been 20, and I could have
Wow.
really enjoyed it, like, when it was, like, not such a big deal to be doing cocaine. I was way
Yeah,
too late.
when no one knew how addictive and destructive it was. Sure.
Amazing. I would
Yeah,
have loved
amazing.
it.
I know.
Ugh.
But talk about music for a second. Finding these '80s kind of
Oh, they're
soundtracks has been
so
really
good.
fun.
Oh,
Really
it's so good.
yeah,
I was like, "Ooh, I feel like I'm in Wolf of Wall Street right now."
yeah,
Like, it took
yeah,
me
yeah,
right there, all the finance bros and, like, I really liked this section. I mean, I really love cocaine, so that's
right.
part of why I liked it, but, I also
Well
like the '80s.
well, wait till next episode, the next circle of hell is greed. So
Oh,
we revisit this,
okay.
in a more major way. So, yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it. I think it's absolutely crazy. I already knew that about the Coca-Cola. The cocaine
Mhm.
used to be in Coca-Cola. Nuts.
Yep,
Unbelievable.
yep.
I also really liked you called yourself out here a little bit. You called yourself out. You said, "Now I could get into a long, incredibly interesting dissertation as to how and why cocaine was everywhere, but that would be way too off topic, even for me, a guy who loves tangents."
Yes.
And that is very self-aware, slightly self-deprecating. I think it makes you relatable to the listener. So
Oh,
I liked that. Yeah.
well, thank
I
you.
think it's
Well,
good to
thank you.
like I'm constantly calling out like I point out my faults on my podcast.
Yeah,
Like, oh man, I say every 3 minutes and I'm not going to edit that out. So sorry guys. Like it makes you human, you know?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um
Well, but I'm serious. I could do a whole podcast series just about the history of the cartels and the Cuban exiles that started the cocaine trade and all that. It's so politically interesting, it's so culturally interesting, it's so financially interesting. There's so many different angles to attack it from. Yeah.
yeah, I would love a podcast on the cartel. It's fascinating to me.
Mm.
Awful, but fascinating. But you did say like I'm not going to go off on a tangent about this, and then I mean, you did a little bit go.
Not the full tangent.
No,
Tangent
not the
could have
full
been much
tangent.
more tangenty, okay?
Yeah,
This was a
it
mini
could have.
tangent.
Yes,
Yes.
it could have. It
Bay
was
of
very interesting. I was like, wait, Bay of
I
Pigs,
know
like
Bay of
where are we
Pigs screams
going?
tangent, I understand, but that's what started the Cuban exiles coming to Miami. They were all
It
the
came
CIA
together.
trained. Right, okay, okay,
It did. It came together. I mean, it wasn't a off-topic tangent. It worked.
right.
But I was like, where the fuck are we going with this? And then
Yeah,
a little Scarface in there. You brought it all together. Okay.
there you go.
It
There you go.
worked. I
Thank you.
did I take notes as I'm listening like the first
Mhm.
time so that I can have my like first reaction and then I go back and listen again and go through them. So my first note was like you ended the kind of cocaine tangent talking about like how expensive it was and how it was essentially the same price today that it was in the '80s,
Yeah,
which is I mean that was really a good to say that the average price of a car was $8,000 back then, $50,000 today, like huge difference, but cocaine is the same. I mean, that's first of all unbelievable
yeah.
and understandable. And so you ended on that note, and I was like, okay, but how is, and then you said, but Ramirez is constantly able because of the abundance of cocaine. He's always able to stay. I don't remember your exact wording, but he
Mhm.
always is able to have his drug habit kind of fulfilled. And I was like, and I wrote down how it's expensive. You just said it's expensive. How is this guy going to get it? And then you immediately said he turned to criminal activity.
Mhm.
And then I thought, I don't know if you know this about me actually, but like I did cocaine for a
Mhm.
while when I was 19 and then I went to rehab.
Mhm.
But before that, I I had no money and I had to afford the cocaine. And so I like broke into my parents' house and stole from them
Mm.
and
Yeah.
pawned like my grandmother's jewelry. And then when I eventually was like, I can't do this anymore. And I went to my parents for help and they were like, you're going to jail or you're going to rehab. I was like, I'll go to rehab. And my mom, before I went to rehab, we went to every pawn store that I pawned stuff. And she made me go with her and like explain what I had done and why I had done it. And then we bought it all back. Well, not all of it, but we tried.
So, but you
Yeah.
got a lot of it back or half of it
Some
back
of
or
it. Yeah, maybe half of it, maybe a little less. Some
wow.
of it back. She was very, very upset. And what a fucking asshole. I mean, like, God, awful.
And rehab worked for you, like, first time?
Yeah. I went to Sierra Tucson here in Tucson.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I haven't done cocaine since then, since I was
Well,
19. So worked.
good for you. It
In the
worked.
sense that I didn't do
You're one
cocaine.
of
I
the
mean,
luck
yeah,
yeah,
I
but
mean, I
you're one of the
still,
lucky ones. Yeah.
sure. I also don't think it wasn't like I was doing cocaine for years.
Right.
It was a short and intense love
Yeah.
affair with it. So,
That's what happens. Grabs
yeah.
you.
Oh my God, immediately. I loved it. And I'll still say that today. I love it. I wish I could do it recreationally. Love it. But I can't and I will not.
Yeah. So
So that
destructive.
was that, but that made sense. Like that clicked for me that like, oh yeah, of course, his criminal activity. He has to be stealing stuff because how else is he gonna afford this?
Again, next episode, we get really deep into who his partners were, how he was making money, what that whole kind of system kind of looked like,
Oh, good.
yeah, who his criminal partners were, how we met them, how like all that. It gets into that because that was a big question that a lot of that not just you, that a lot of people have. Like,
Yeah.
how was he
How
doing
is
this?
he affording this? And then I was like, how is he stealing all these cars? Because you were like, he steals a different car. And I was like, does nobody care about stolen cars back then?
Sure they
So
do.
like,
That was ultimately his undoing,
oh,
which
really?
you will find out about. Yes.
Oh. Okay, so I have
Yeah.
a question for
Yeah.
you. You talk about how, and like this makes sense that the cocaine fueled his psychopathy, his
Mhm.
hypersexuality, and his violence and all that, which sure, that completely makes sense. But I was wondering, do you think it only does that like in the moment, like acutely, like in that moment, or is it like long-term use will will literally change, make him more psychopathic, make him more hyposexual, not just in that moment that he did cocaine, but like over the long term. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And so I will refer to a joke from a once amazing comedian, one of the best, who had this a stunning fall, Bill Cosby. Bill
Ah,
Cosby had a
okay.
joke
This is
in the
bold.
'80s, had a joke in the '80s.
Uh-huh.
He had a very, very popular one-hour, like, comedy special in the '80s that
Okay.
everybody watched 1,000 times. I watched it 1,000 times as a kid, because he only swore one time in it. The rest of it was just all family-friendly, hilarious, observational comedy, okay?
Okay.
But in the opening, he talked a little bit about the popularity of cocaine
Uh-huh.
and how he never really understood it and how he was at a party and he was talking to a guy who was trying to convince him that he should do cocaine. And Cosby's like, "I don't understand. Like, why would I do it?" And the guy goes, "Well, because cocaine intensifies your personality." And Cosby's
Oh.
reply was, "Well, what if you're an asshole?" Okay. And that was a huge joke, and the audience laughed for, like, 5 minutes. It was an applause break,
That's
okay?
really good.
Obviously, there were a lot of coke users in his audience, and so the way that that relates to
Um,
your question is that would that that
mhm.
w that it wasn't a doctor or a shrink that Cosby was talking to, it
Sure.
was an '80s business cokehead guy at a party, but
Right.
he's right? He's right in a lot of ways, and so
Yeah.
take someone like Ramirez, who has all of those terrible mental afflictions, okay? And if it's true, if we could assume for a moment that what this joke was true, that cocaine
Yeah.
intensifies your personality, imagine what that would do to him, okay? So,
Ugh,
I don't
nasty.
know. Oh, that I mean, just makes everything just turned all
Ugh.
the way up. The volume goes all the way up. I don't know medically if what the long-term effects of it on
Yeah.
if it changes your brain chemistry or anything like that, or, um, I know just from depictions in movies, like, look what happened to Tony Montana, look at Scarface at the end, how he went completely insane, snorting mountains of coke off of his desk. Lines were so big, he's cutting them with his hand.
Oh, I wish I was there. Uh,
You would have totally been an '80s Miami, like, coke girl, huh?
oh, I
Hanging
would have
out with the cartel
loved it.
people, right?
Totally. Totally. I wish. Man, would have loved it.
My goodness. So, I guess we can assume that whatever Ramirez's proclivities for violence and hypersexuality and just mayhem were
They were turned all the way up by
massively
cocaine.
intensified, um, when he was on coke. Yeah.
I have one more question, and it's going back, but I meant to ask this earlier. Like, it was interesting, and I guess maybe you could assume that he likely came from not a great home based on how he turned out. But like, do you think? I mean, you have to assume that that had contributed to who he was, right? His violent home life.
One of the circles of hell upcoming is called Violence, and that episode is pretty sure almost completely dedicated to
Oh,
a really deep dive into how he grew
okay,
up,
good. Oh,
who his
cool.
influences were, what kind of shaped him, and, it's really unsettling.
Okay, good, because you really tease it, like, at 10 years old, he was drinking and what and I mean and I was like,
Escapism.
"Well, I wanna know more about
Yeah,
it."
oh,
So
you
that's
will. You
okay.
will. You
Okay,
will.
good,
Okay.
good.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I liked that you explained the fingerprint on the
Mm,
screen
yep.
and, like because when you were saying that, like, he's been booked before, he served time in LA County Jail, and in my head, I'm like, "Well, how the fuck did no one guess or get a vibe or, like, just recognize that this is a lunatic and
Mhm.
maybe, we should look into him more." I guess you can't really do that just based on the fact that he seems like a lunatic. But yes, then the next question was, well, if he's been fingerprinted, like, why did they
Yeah,
not catch him? Um,
yeah.
and I
And he
feel like,
wore gloves. He started wearing gloves.
right.
Yeah.
So, oh God. Okay, so the crimes.
Mm,
Really, your descriptions of these, I was like pained. It was
yeah.
uh shot him in the face and then beat him unconscious. First of all, he wasn't unconscious from the shot in the face, I guess, and then continued to beat him. And this guy lived briefly. I mean, that's not
Long enough to make a phone call, yeah.
kind of unfortunate. He would have been better if he had just died, probably, because like
Yeah.
that, I can't even imagine. Just awful. And he didn't he did or didn't rape the disabled wife who was in bed? Didn't. I think because I wrote down, oh, he did. I wrote down why
Yeah,
only rape but no murder. Why didn't he murder her? It's so weird how he like no rhyme or reason.
exactly.
Just
Exactly.
like maybe I'll kill him, maybe I won't.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. You don't that's what the investigators were dealing with. Are we sure it's the same guy? Sometimes he kills, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes they're young, sometimes they're old. Sometimes it's a gun
oh,
or
I
it's a
mean,
knife or it's strangulation or it's thumb cuffs. What? Fuck did he
oh,
get
the
thumb cuffs?
sisters, those sisters,
Oh,
the I mean, just I mean, there's for so many reasons. And honestly, you said sadly they never regained consciousness. And I thought maybe it's not so sad.
that's
Sad for the
depressing.
investigation, not sad for them. Like, thank God,
Yeah.
because how absolutely awful.
Stabbing, electrocution. I mean,
Yeah, you
just
said tortured with the like the cord and
Yeah, so basically he took
Ugh.
a desk lamp and yanked the cord out of the lamp part, so there were exposed wires, but then plugged it into the wall and just
Oh,
kept zapping her. Yeah,
oh God,
yeah, yeah.
Jesus.
Which
So
was
one,
new, which was new.
yeah,
And cops are like, "What the
one, the
fuck is
thumb
going on
cuffs,
here?"
that was new, right? The
Say that
thumb
again.
cuff, the thumb cuffs were new,
The thumb
right?
cuffs were new, and then
Yeah,
the electrocution was new. And then drawing pentagrams.
yeah, with the
Last time it
lipstick.
was last time it was an inverted cross. And this time it was pentagrams on the legs and on the wall, and so it's the beginning of his really almost completely being overtaken with the satanic kind of elements of his belief structure that became soon would become his entire motivation, which
Ugh.
is dangerous. Again, I've said it and I'll keep saying it. People who think that they're being commanded by a higher power, either
Well,
good or evil, there's no
right,
stopping them. There's
right.
no stopping them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so he left another shoe print
On the
here,
clock radio.
and all I could keep thinking was no hair, no
Mm.
finger. Like I picture him, assaulting these elderly women, and I'm not picturing it, but I'm picturing him, and he's got like his hair's all crazy, and he's sweaty, and he's gross, and he's on cocaine, so he's kind of, I don't picture it like a very controlled, like let me
No,
stab her here, like
it's
he's
mayhem.
out of
It's mayhem.
control. So
Yeah.
like my hair is that I have like my hair's in Mark's car, my hair's probably still in your house. Like I leave
Right.
hair
What would they
everywhere I
compare it
go.
to? Let's say they did. What do they compare it
Yeah.
to?
Okay, that's true. Okay.
Right?
Well, there, damn,
So
that's true.
the DNA fucking everywhere. What do they compare it to?
Okay, well, that now I feel dumb, but yes, that makes, because
What,
I was like, how is
so
there no hair, DNA, skin,
right.
something like he just left
There's
one footprint?
right. There's all that. This is also the mid '80s, right? So CODIS was
That's
probably
true.
brand new. I get into this in later episodes, but
Yeah.
they almost didn't get him. They almost didn't get him because uh, their the fingerprint database at this point only went back to 1960. If you were born before
Oh,
1960, they didn't input your fingerprints, whatever. Okay, and that's
okay.
the year that he was born. Like he just made it. He just made it into the system. Okay, but with regard, there was no DNA database, or if there was,
Right.
it was in its infancy, right?
Right.
So a hair sample would be like, okay, is it a black curly hair? Okay,
Right. Yeah.
that's it. Here's another
That's
black
true.
curly hair. But
Yeah.
but again, they didn't have the database, and most importantly, like I said, they had nothing. They had no samples to compare it to. So that weren't already collected from a criminal. They didn't have a base sample or a
Right.
database to say, is this
The same person or
has this
right.
offender been fingerprinted, or we have a DNA sample from, right? So yeah,
Huh. Okay. What Mountain Dew can? You mentioned a Mountain Dew can.
yeah. That was an oversight. I omitted a
Sorry.
part. No. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm glad you brought it up because I kind of omitted. The episode was running a little long, so I got rid of
Yeah.
some stuff. And they thought that they had him because there was a crushed Mountain Dew can that's consistent with
Oh,
crushing of someone's hand. Um, but instead of fingerprints, they saw a glove pattern on it. So that's how they knew. All right, that's why this guy's not leaving prints, because he's wearing gloves. So it was addition a little bit uh, to their information that they had on the guy. Uh, the information being, we're probably not going to get prints off this guy because he's wearing gloves now. Um,
right.
so that scared them a little bit, that he was getting smarter, because at the Vincow residence there was the thumbprint on the screen.
Right.
Not enough to match, but
Right.
he's like, okay, as I'm going to get more into this mayhem and violence and murder, I'm going to start wearing gloves.
Do you
So
think
there
that
were,
he thought that?
I
You
do.
think that he had that thought, like,
Yep.
"I'm gonna get better at this." Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
He thought he was doing the work of the devil, and he needed to do it right. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty brutal.
It's
Yeah. I
so
know.
weird to think about how people's brains can just be so
different
fucked
and
up.
evil and
Yeah. I
and
mean,
lack of empathy and lack of, humanity and
I just it
remorse.
really is unbelievable.
Well,
Um,
that's what Salerno said. He said this guy he never showed one bit of remorse or sorrow, was never sorry for what he did. Uh, nothing. He wanted to go down as the greatest serial killer in history.
well, yeah, I mean, I guess at a certain point when you're like killing people in all the way terrible things that he's doing, like at a certain point, like let's double down and just lean into it. What are you
Okay,
going to
get it right.
apologize at this point? Like,
Yep.
no. Oh, the raping with the hammer. I mean, this was a descriptive. These murders they're all awful from all the episodes, but these were they like
The
it
skull
was a gut
fractures where the
punch.
brain was exposed.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
that part. Oh, yeah, I can't. That
And these little old lady, just sisters, just living
I
their
know.
lives, roommates, you know?
You know what? You know what I thought though, which is really terrible. This is not better than what I'm about to say. But I was like, well, they both died together. Neither one of them
Oh,
had to like live on without the other,
it's
because
true.
that's what I'm always scared of. I'm like, oh my God, my sister's going to die. Mark's going to die. I'm going to be by myself. I'm not going to have anybody. And that's going to be terrible. So at least they both went at the same time. Absolutely awful the way that they went.
Yeah, they were
Obviously.
terrified, scared, right? I mean, I know.
Hopefully one of the knocks with the hammer, hopefully they became
Done.
unconscious before.
Unconscious, like right
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what you have
Severe
to
brain
hope.
trauma. They weren't gonna wake up, but I know.
Ugh, terrible.
Yeah,
Really good
yeah.
episode though.
Well,
Really
thank
good
you.
episode.
I
This was
appreciate it.
a tangenty episode, but you did a good job. You are very um profound at being able to kind of bring it all back together.
Ah, terrific, terrific. Well,
Yeah.
again, I aim high. I always aim high. I don't always hit the target, but I
No,
hope it's
this
interesting and,
it is.
I learned stuff every episode. I knew very little about El Paso, which was great. I
Yeah.
had no idea about the 442nd. What a kick-ass regiment.
Wow.
That came up as kind of an apology. Sorry for the relocation camps. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
let you serve. So it was just such a
Yeah,
weird
I
and
never knew I didn't know anything about that. So,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm definitely learning. That's what I wrote down that I was like, you should do a podcast that's cliff notes from major moments in history or major literature, famous
Mm.
works of literature. Like you're quite good at kind of putting it in an accessible way. Like I don't love history, but
Oh, I
I
do,
feel like
yeah.
I'm learning stuff and I'm interested in the way that you're telling it. I would never have ever known anything about Dante
Mm.
until this. And now I'm interested. Now I'm like, maybe I do want to learn a little bit more about this. So like I think you could really be a successful Cliff Notes podcaster and people who want to know about something but don't want to sit down and
Hold
read
on, I
an
lost your audio. Can you
850.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you not hear me? I can hear you.
There we go. Now you're back. Sorry.
Okay. That's
My
okay.
bad. I'm sure it's still recording, but I just didn't hear it. So,
It's
well,
still
I hope
recording.
maybe you'll read Dante.
Maybe I will. Or maybe you'll start a Cliff Notes podcast and you'll just tell me about it and I don't have to read it. Oh, so you're having technical difficulties.
Can you hear me
Can't
now?
hear me? I can hear you. I can hear you the whole time.
Great. Okay,
I can
good.
hear you. Can you
I
not hear
hear
me?
you. No, I
Oh,
got you. I got you. I got you. I got you. Sorry about that. Sorry
okay.
about that. Well, listen, thank
All
you.
right. Well,
Thank you for listening.
yeah,
Really, and for your great notes.
sure.
And
My pleasure.
episode 4 is in the Dropbox.
Oh, it is? Okay, good.
Well, no, not
Good.
yet. Not yet. It
Oh,
will be. It will be soon. It will be soon. So,
okay. Fine.
I just want to say again, really, thank you for listening. Thank you to all the listeners out there of The Devil Within, State and Shadow. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider sharing it with a friend. Go over to Apple Podcasts, leave a rate and review. Every little engagement helps the algorithm like crazy. And please consider supporting the great companies that support the show. When you hear me reading goofy ads It's really from the heart, and without their support, I couldn't do what I do. So, really
Good
appreciate
job.
it, and thank you, Margot, again,
Thank you.
and we will see you soon. So, and please, Death by Southwest with Margot Carmichael.
Thank you.
Check it out, and until next time, stay safe out there.
Bye.